Good morrow, scholars. I'm not sure if this will have an intro placed in front of it, like the videos normally do, so there's that. I can't remember if I did for the last one. I'll go back and check. Anyway, welcome back to Star Wars Fate of the Jedi Outcast. Like I mentioned, I'm fairly certain, in the very first video I did many weeks ago before my life went all topsy-turvy. Dang, that would have been a good time to make a reference to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Man, that's a dated reference. Anyway, I kind of wanted to go over the final series of books that were Star Wars before Disney went and took over the canonicity. I just thought it'd be a fun little thing to do, and I'm kind of excited still, because I have all these lightsabers. Obviously, I've got Star Wars related merchandise here in my room. A lot of Star Wars books over here. So, yeah, anyway, we are in Chapter 2, page 15. And this chapter is like 17 pages long, so we're going to be here for a minute. I have been here for a minute. Anyway. Valen swung his blade in a lightning-quick circle, low backward to high forward, a move that would cut the imposter in two vertically. I think. Or what? No, it would have been. There we go. I'm also taking up lightsabering. The Not Corrin's lightsaber blade was suddenly alive and raised horizontally, blocking his blow. Like the real Corrin's, it shone silver. Perhaps the man had seized the real Corrin's weapon. It certainly looked identical. Valen felt his heart sink further. He threw a series of short slashes at Not Corrin's head, left shoulder, and left side, but his opponent blocked each one with minimal arm motion. Ah, yes. With little effort. Then the imposter's brown boot was slamming into Valen's chest, hurtling him backward into his right. Valen crashed down painfully atop the water-filled sink, his ribs bruising against the faucet, his right buttock shattering, soaking dishes. Disoriented, he spun his blade in a defensive circle, but Not Corrin did not immediately follow up. Instead, he was shouting, "Mirax, out now!" I forgot Corrin's voice. And the woman impersonating his mother was leaving the room at a dead run, tears and a bewildered, pained expression on her face. Valen heaved himself off the sink, his rear end wet, and landed on his feet, very unbecoming of a Jedi. He pointed his blade at Not Corrin, an informal salute of grudging respect. "You've studied. Where?" "Put the blade away, boy. I don't know what you're seeing or feeling, but we can get people in here whom you trust. We can even get Luke Skywalker here. Sure, I'll happily give you time to call your reinforcements. Tactically, that's a good solution for me. You make the calls, then." Never mind. Valen paused as if hesitating, but took that moment to assess his options. Not Corrin was at least as good a swordsman as Valen, and Not Mirax was clearly off calling in more help. Soon enough, Valen would be overmatched. To Valen's right were the sink and stove, cabinets above, wall behind. To the left was a wall between him and the living room. Against it stood a sideboard and the small table where Mirax's carry bag rested. Ahead was the only path out of this chamber, and Not Corrin was in the way. Well, that was all right. In rental quarters like these, lightly constructed for ease of remodeling and for the sake of cheapness, Valen didn't need a door. He darted to the left and boosted his speed with a touch of the Force. He aimed for the open spot between the table and sideboard, and the wall. There was suddenly and the wall there was suddenly wreckage filling the air with white powder, falling away from him in pieces, barely registering as an impact against Valen's body. It gave way as readily as a flimsy barrier would to a normal man. Flimsy barrier? I don't know. Now he was in the main living chamber. Ahead was a sofa, and the wall behind it was a large picture viewport with a real waterfall cascading by a few meters beyond. To the right was the door out and another window beside it. Also to the right was a blur, not Corn in force-speeded motion, paralleling him, not between him and the door. Valen didn't alter his trajectory. He dived forward into the viewport, counting on the minimal expense construction of this property to mean that the transparent steel there was thin, or that the mountings holding it to the wall were not the strongest. He was right on both counts. Again, he barely felt the impact as he punched through the viewport. I apologize. The thin, transparent steel folded around him. Together they hurtled into the sunlight, though through the waterfall downpour and into the open air beyond. That sounds pretty. Valen exerted himself, throwing the oversized sheet of transparent foil away, and dropped into what looked like a bottomless city canyon bordered on two sides by soaring, gaudily decorated banks of sky towers. I like that term a lot better than skyscrapers. Anyway. This was a vacationers' district, the vast lengths of sky rises, occupied mostly by hostels, restaurants, spas, and other businesses catering to travelers and celebrants from all over Coruscant and the Alliance. Them were the days. The gap separating this bank of sky towers from the one facing it was about 30 meters wide, farther than his leap would carry him, but there were multiple streams of speeder traffic above and below. As he dropped, he took note of a blue and yellow striped speeder approaching below. He twisted, angling toward it, and he came down on the hood of the vehicle, landing in a deep crouch. Ouch, that's got to be murder on the knees. The front end of the speeder dipped precipitously. The one time I mess up on a word, I should know that. Anyway, under the force of his impact, the pilot was an Ortolan, rotund and blue-skinned. His broad ears and snout suddenly snapped back by the wind. I think it's the weird little elephant thing that plays like a keyboard with its feet. They don't have hands. Anyway, where was I? His broad ears and snout suddenly being snapped back by the wind. Valen saw the pilot's eyes open wide. The repulsor lift of the speeder shrieked under the sudden demand imposed by Valen's landing. It tried to spring the speeder's nose back up. It succeeded, and as it did, Valen sprang up and forward, leaping as far as the opposite traffic lane. There he came down atop a long bus, which did not budge under his landing. Makes sense. Valen flipped forward again, somersaulting, and this time landed on the deck of an open-air tourist conveyance that was beginning to fill up with vacationers boarding via a short ramp from the adjacent hostel patio. Ugh. The vacationers started with surprise at the sudden appearance of a drenched, insufficiently clothed Jedi with a live lightsaber in his hand. Valen couldn't keep anger and a little panic out of his voice. "I need a comlink, quick!" He held out his hand. The few seconds that followed crawled like an eternity, but gave Valen time to think, to wonder. The vacationers and tourists boarding this vehicle were, to all outward appearances, ordinary beings of the middle class. Most of them were dressed in garments far more colorful, revealing, or both, than they would ever wear at home. What? They seemed normal, but how many of them, too, might be imposters? He had no sense whatsoever of the scale of this deception. One of them, a beautiful red-skinned Twi'lek, they are very rare. Red-skinned, I mean. Shut. Twi'lek woman, finished struggling to unclip something from her white halter top, she extended the object toward Valen, her hand open. It was a comlink. He reached for it. Not Corn thumped shoulders first into the deck and rolled to his feet 4 meters from Valen. His own lightsaber was in his hand, but unlit. His voice raised, so all on the vehicle could hear. Sounded sad, pained. Everybody, stand back. This man is not well. I'll handle this. Valen gestured at Not Corn. You're not well. You're conspiring against the Jedi Order, and you should know that's a dangerous, usually fatal mistake. He called on inner resources, on memories of scores of battles endured and won. He let those memories fill him and push out the panic and anguish he'd been feeling. New calmness, quieting and deepening his voice, he said, "All right, your decision, your fate. I'm just going to cut my way through you and then go find out who's behind this." Again, he sprang at the man who was not his father. This time, no concern for self-preservation affected his tactics. He went completely on the offensive, his sole goal to cut down Not Corn. He threw blow after blow with stuttered laser speed, backing Not Corn up against the vehicle rail, then down the ramp to the hostel's patio restaurant beyond. Restaurant patrons scattered, leaving tables loaded with half-finished meals, drinks, and bags. Not Corn did not take advantage of a couple of openings Valen's tactics offered him. Valen felt a surge of optimism. Not Corn's adherence to the true Corn's loyalties clearly meant he would not cut Valen down. Valen did not feel the same consideration toward his enemy. And though Valen was tiring, Not Corn had it worse. The older man was beginning to sweat. Not Corn backflipped to the far side of a round white table made of light durasteel. As he landed, he kicked the table toward Valen. Valen ignored the dishes and food hurtling toward him. He slashed at the table itself, cleaving it in two. Had he possessed the full range of Jedi powers, he could have swept it aside with an exertion of telekinesis. But like his father, he was deficient in that ability. Yes, they are quite known for not being good at telekinesis. I'm not even joking. That's really bad. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh. Not Corn now stood 5 meters away, breathing heavily, his blade at a single-handed downward defensive angle. Valen gave him a look of grudging admiration. You know, to exhibit all the Jedi skills, but refrain from using telekinesis so that you can maintain the impersonation shows a lot of dedication. Too bad it won't get you anything. Too bad you have to die. Boy, this has to this has got to end now. I don't know. Sorry. Not Corn threw up his free hand as if finally to make a telekinetic attack. Valen hesitated, not sure which way to jump. Then he realized something bad. Not Corn hadn't used any force power, but had, through this gesture, frozen Valen in place just for an instant. Valen felt a sensation of immediate, oh no, it says imminent, danger. Then it hit him, a blow from behind, a shock felt by every part of his body. His knees gave way, he fell forward, his vision graying. But before he lost consciousness completely, he saw beyond the railing of the patio a hovering airspeeder. His mother's speeder, with Not Mirix standing in the driver's seat, her military-grade blaster pistol in her hands aimed at him. Tears streamed from her eyes as if to mimic the artificial waterfall that framed her from 30 meters beyond. Dang it. My chest hurts. Senate Building, Coruscant. How do you pronounce it? Luke Skywalker found it amazing that there was a chamber this large in the Senate Building he had never seen. It was 6 stories in height, and broad and deep enough to hold 2,000 spectators. The permanent bench seating was filled almost to capacity. Late arrivals moving along the aisles and peering anxiously to find open spots. Sorry. At the head of the chamber stood an enormous dais. I don't know. With 2 cloth-draped tables, swivel seats set up behind them, and a lectern between them. Huh. On the carpeted floor before the thing were round tables with chairs placed to face the front of the room. There we go. It was much like an oversized courtroom set up for a panel of judges, but more informal in its arrangement and far less somber in its decorative style. The carpets and padding on the bench seats and backs were soothing blues and purples. The walls were off-white with Galactic Alliance symbols painted large upon them, and the furniture up front was unthreatening tan gold. And Luke had never seen the place before. Had it always been there? Were there many more such chambers in this gargantuan building? The dice tables were fully occupied and... oh my goodness. Hiccups. And the male Bothan sitting in the most central chair, his red and tan fur rippling with the consequence of the moment, nodded to an aide who had just whispered to him. The Bothan stood and took the lectern beside his seat. Only 45 minutes late, he said, his amplified voice booming across the chamber. Not bad for a Galactic Alliance event, yes? His remark drew a faint laugh from the crowd. Encouraged, he continued. I am Senator Tirg Drelai, chair of the Unification Preparations Committee, and the organizer of this event. Over the next several days, in both private and public sessions, we will be examining the relationship between the Galactic Alliance, the states of the Confederation, the Galactic Empire. Don't worry, it's not what you think. And individual planet states with the aim of restoring our I'm the priest from the Princess Bride. No. Great planetary union to levels of strength and security equaling, even surpassing those it enjoyed before the recent war. It should really be wars, because it never really stopped. Anyway. Well, I mean, technically each one did stop, but every time one stopped, a new one started, essentially. Anyway. I'll go over this in a series of lore videos if you'd like to kind of be companions to the series. So maybe after a chapter, the next day I can do a video about stuff that we discuss here only in length so that you guys can understand. Anyway, Ben, Luke's 16-year-old son, sat to Luke's left. Red-headed, athletic, that's not me. He was dressed in the black tunic and pants that were his trademark whenever Jedi dress was not absolutely called for. Now he frowned, curious. What about the Happens? They were invited. I don't know what his voice would sound like. He was never in it. Never mind. Luke gestured for Ben to lower his voice, though the remark had not been loud enough to carry beyond the Jedi table. Man. I can't do impressions of Luke. Or really anybody from the movies. They were invited, but they were invited incorrectly, so they didn't come. Huh? The Bothan's renewed speech checked Luke's reply for a moment. What? This morning we'll be hearing opening remarks from some of the session organizers and speakers offering a sense of what we hope to accomplish. Luke tuned him out and turned toward Ben. The Happens were issued an invitation, but its language suggested very faintly that their presence was less critical than that of the Remnant and the Confederation. They couldn't agree to attend without appearing to accept a lower status than the others. So, knowing that there will be later unification summits where they can be the stars, they claimed a prior commitment. Ben frowned. Why was the invitation worded that way? Was it an accident? Leia Organa Solo, Luke's sister, sitting to Luke's right, looked toward father and son. A slightly graying, dark-haired, diminutive woman dressed in brown Jedi robes. She currently blended in with her company, but as a former chief of state of the New Republic, she could have dressed to be the equal of the most extravagant politician present, and not have been ill thought of because of it. She offered Ben a knowing smile. No written invitation sent to an important leader has accidents like that in it. Of course, the Alliance Diplomatic Corps claims that no insult was intended. They claim regrettable misinterpretation of figures of speech, which subtly puts the blame on the Happens for being touchy. I still don't understand why the Alliance wouldn't want them here for this. Ben pressed. Luke shrugged. Actually, I don't have any idea. I don't. And I've read this book. Twice, I think. Leia nodded toward the dais, gesturing at the table to the right, to the Bothan's left. They don't want to dilute the Imperial presence or to interfere with Imperial cooperation. Huh. Startled, Luke gave the table another look. Galactic Alliance Chief of State, Natasi Dala. I don't believe I've uploaded anything for this particular person, but she is over there in that book that you can't see from your vantage point. Well, I mean, it's kind of right there. It's called Jedi Search. It takes place 5 years after the Battle of Endor, I believe. I can't quite remember. Anyway, she's the main bad guy in that movie, that book. A lot has changed. This, in case I forgot to mention in the previous video, this series takes place 40 years after the Battle of Yavin, if memory serves correctly. Where was I? Galactic Alliance Chief of State Natasi Dala sat at the end of the table. A woman of late middle years, she had copper-colored hair and lovely features made less appealing by her rigid military bearing. She wore a white admiral's uniform with broad swaths of service medals across the tunic. A one-time protege of the Empire's Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin, yes, the very same, and uncharitably assumed by many to have achieved her military rank because she was also his lover. Yes, this is true. But that's not why she got never... Shut up. She had been the leader of the Galactic Alliance for 2 years, and had done a fine, measured job of restoring the Union's economies and networks of political allies. Or alliances, what am I saying? Which had been shattered by the recent war. To her right sat Jagged Fell, the young head of state of the Imperial Remnant, raised among the Chiss. Grand Admiral Thrawn. They're the blue-skinned people with red eyes, never mind. Proven in battle as a combat pilot in the Yuzon Vong War, we'll go over that at some point. He was a reluctant leader who had shown himself to be adept at keeping the Imperial Moffs in line and in managing difficult Imperial-Happen relations. To Jag's right, immediately beside the still droning Bothan, was Tir Fenir, Supreme Military Commander of the Confederation. He was the closest that loose alliance of planets had to an overall leader, pale, aristocratic, with a scar reaching from the middle of his left cheek to the corner of his mouth. He, like Fell, was a former combat pilot. The reputation he'd earned early in his career for classic Imperial backstabbing, politics, and combat savagery had changed over the years to one of pragmatism and honorable service. Good for him. And until now, Luke had given no conscious thought to the fact that these three, the most eminent politicians on Coruscant at this moment, were all Imperials. That realization struck him like a bucket of icy water. He had fought the Imperials for decades, had played a role in the defeat of every one of their major operations during that time. And here they were, in charge of everything. Leia glanced at Luke, amused. I felt that. I didn't put it together until now. I've been thinking of the three of them as themselves, not as Imperials. The fate of the galaxy is, all of a sudden, in the hands of Imperials. Yes. When did it strike you? 2 years ago, when Dala and Fel took their posts within a short time of each other. You didn't mention it to me? She shrugged. There was nothing I could do about it. or should do about it. The symbolism of them all being Imperials in one way or another is nothing compared with the question of who they are inside. I mean, the rebellion was largely made up of former Imperials, um, Crix, Medine, Mon Mothma, Jan Dodonna. I'm a former Imperial senator. True, and all three leaders up at that table are honorable people. Yes, but that doesn't mean that they want what we want, or that they can see the consequences of their decisions the way we can. Leia's smile became distinctly ironic. I bet Palpatine's ghost is laughing at us right now. Probably. Luke forced himself to relax. He had, over the years, become convinced that in the absence of Palpatine and his immediate successors as Isaine Izard and Sate Pistage, what it meant to be an Imperial had changed. The Moffs, sector governors, tended to be as scheming and self-serving as they were 40 years earlier, see? But the military, an even more potent force in the Remnant, was largely populated by men and women who simply preferred a more orderly, more governed society than that found in the Alliance. The Empire was no longer a symbol of tyranny or of planetary genocide. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Empire as it is now, not the genocide, never mind. But the strangeness of the situation did not leave Luke. He took a look around the table to see if the others present were similarly affected. Kip Duron faced the dice and wore an expression suggesting that he was somewhere else, maintaining a false show of interest that was nothing but polite veneer. Again, he is in Jedi Search over there. Jaina, as beautiful as her mother, Leia, you can see why a lot of people think that Rey... Never mind. Let's not get into that, no. But even more dangerous, concentrated on those at the dice, especially Jagged Fell. Han Solo, lanky, weathered, and vital, sitting to the right of Leia, wore his traditional vest and trousers. Yeah. He never really changed much. The latter decorated with the Corellian blood stripes, his informal mode of dress in defiance of event protocols. He stared in heavy-lidded disinterest at the speaker. Cam and Tion Solusar, I don't know, no visible sign left of the savage mutilations they had survived during the recent war, ignored the Bothan speech and whispered between themselves. And the horns blinked. Where were Corrin and Mirax? They'd be testifying before separate panels later today and had announced they would be present at these opening ceremonies. Luke grinned sourly to himself. Corrin Horn was a loyal ally and would stand beside him in the face of any danger, but he was obviously canny enough to avoid the threat of death by boredom. Sorry. 2 hours later, those who had been sitting at the Jedi table moved out in a knot from the Senate building into the sunlight shining on the plaza outside. Immediately, Luke felt heat from the sun soaking into his dark Grand Master garments. Luke's essentially what Yoda was in the prequels. Han stretched, resulting in a series of popping noises from his arms and shoulders. Oh, man. I think I died a couple of times during the speeches. His voice was a grumble. Leia kept poking me and starting my heart again. Some sort of dark side force technique, I bet. Leia smirked and gave his ribs a two-finger jab. Like that, Han shrank away. Ow. And yes. And I think maybe you should have let me stay dead, because I just know there are going to be more speeches to come, and I have to be at some of them. I can't do any impressions, so forgive me. Leia gave him a look that was both disapproving and amused. It wasn't that bad. Neither the pokes nor the speeches. Luke grinned and brought out his comlink. It, like all the comlinks taken into the ceremonial hall, had been switched off as a courtesy to the event. Now he switched it on. Immediately, it beeped multiple times, indicating that he had several messages to listen to, several calls to return. Jada's was doing the same thing. She grimaced. Busy day to come. Luke felt at first a ripple in the force, not exactly of menace, but of disquiet. He looked around the plaza, seeing the ostentatiously dressed members of the crowd continuing to stream out from the Senate building. Speeder traffic confined itself to its proper travel lane some distance away. No, that wasn't true. 4 night blue personnel transport speeders, traveling in a tight chain and at a moderate speed just above pedestrian head height, were moving toward this building entrance. This was not an unusual sight in the government districts of Coruscant. Troops were often moved in to offer security at an event, but such movements usually took place before the event began, not after it ended. The other masters present felt the disquiet and became more alert, but made no outward sign. Then Jaina noticed. She put her hand on her lightsaber. Oh my goodness. Ben? Luke kept his voice low. Drop back, blend in with the crowd. Call Nawara Ben. Sorry. Ben glanced around and spotted the transports. His jaw tightened. He looked as though he wanted to argue, but he simply stopped in place, disappearing from among the other Jedi as they continued to move forward. He drew out his comlink and thumbed it on. The 4 personnel carriers broke formation, one crossing past the group of Jedi and swinging in at their left side, one drawing up short and landing to their right. The third slid into place between them and the Senate building, while the 4th settled immediately ahead of them. The maneuver, smooth and seemingly well-practiced, left the Jedi and Han within a large, open-cornered box of vehicles. The unhurried and matter-of-fact approach did not alarm the citizens on the plaza, but many were obviously curious about what was going on and began to work their way toward the vehicles. The sides of the transports facing the Jedi opened. They were large swing-out doors, and from each vehicle issued 2 full squadrons of men and women in the blue uniforms and helmets of Galactic Alliance Security, the GAS. They wore black riot armor on chests, forearms, and lower legs, and carried blaster rifles. There were also civilians aboard each transport, if bounty hunters, as Luke suspected these beings were, counted as civilians. One was a male Quarren in blue-green robes, swinging up onto his shoulder a cylindrical weapon that looked like it carried missiles sufficient to bring down medium-sized buildings. See that right? His rubbery skin and facial tentacles were rigid with concentration. Another was a petite woman with long black hair, wearing dark robes deliberately fashioned after those of a Jedi. She carried an unlit lightsaber in her hand. Luke had never seen her before. A third, unusual to see in this day and age, was Skakoan, his body encased in a round-cornered, brass-colored robotic suit. I'm not familiar with that one. There were more bounty hunters, 2 or 3 in each transport. Luke noted their positions, but did not react. From the security agents who spread out into a line encircling the Jedi, Luke felt mixed emotions. Excuse me. A few were expectant, spoiling for a fight. Many were worried, even fearful, and determined not to show it in front of their comrades. A few were very, very frustrated. Okay, we're almost done. We've got like 4 more pages. 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. Luke glanced among his comrades. There we go. I do that a lot. Stay calm. We've known for some time that this was coming. Which was true. A few weeks earlier, rumors had fallen into the ears of Luke's political allies that the Alliance government was making a legal case against him. A charge of dereliction of duty resulting from his actions during the war with the Confederation, leading a Stealth X unit as a part of the Alliance military at a crucial battle. Luke had withdrawn his Jedi from the field and then entirely from the Alliance chain of command, after leading them in assaults against Jason Solo. Yes, Again, this is something we can go over. Such an action would constitute treason in other circumstances, but no one in the Alliance would make a capital charge stick against someone who had risked all to oppose Colonel Solo. Still, someone in the Alliance government was clearly offended by the desertion and intended to extract some legal satisfaction from Luke. One of the security officers, a man with captain's insignia on his uniform, his prominent jaw almost ridiculously square, his eyes all but hidden under the partly raised blast visor of his helmet, led a party of 4 other security personnel officers toward the Jedi. Luke turned to face them. Master Luke Skywalker, the captain's voice was deep and grim. He came to a halt 2 meters from Luke. The members of his detail, thrown off by his sudden stop, skidded a little to make sure they did not bump into their superior. I am Captain Savar, Galactic Alliance Security. He held up a black data card, small in his gloved palm. This is a warrant for your arrest. I now exercise it. Please do not offer resistance. Luke could feel Han and Jaina bristling, but the other Jedi remained calm. He could also feel Ben, meters away, agitated and determined. Luke put on a broad, welcoming smile. I wouldn't think of causing you trouble, Captain. May I disarm myself? Carefully. Sorry. The captain was clearly not put off by Luke's compliance, but Luke sensed disappointment from some of the security troopers and most of the bounty hunters. And curiously, for many of the onlookers beyond the circle of troopers. Luke spared them a glance, many of them far more than if the plaza crowd had just been random visitors arriving or leaving the Senate building, or holding holocam rigs, many of professional quality. It's nice to know that even in the Star Wars universe, the paparazzi is still a pain in the butt. Slowly, Luke took his lightsaber from his belt, but as Savar stepped forward to reach for it, Luke passed it to Leia. She clipped it to her belt alongside her own. Savar stopped abruptly, his expression turned to one of disapproval. That, Master Skywalker, does not constitute full cooperation. Leia turned a scornful look on the captain. I'll wager you a month's salary, yours, not mine, since I don't receive a salary, that your warrant doesn't mention his lightsaber. Warrants almost never do. You know why? I suspect not. It's because the damage each one does is indistinguishable from the damage of any other, so they are of almost no use as forensic evidence. Now does your warrant specify his lightsaber? Never mind. Savar looked at her, but ignored the question. He returned his attention to Luke. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. I have instructions to shackle you. Luke obliged, turning to face his companions. He kept up his cheerful demeanor. It wouldn't do for any of the holocams to see him looking irritable, for any recordings of such a response would appear on the news broadcasts. Captain Savar grasped Luke's right wrist and snapped a stun cuff on it. Han was not as cordial as Luke. Are you under orders to treat him like a common criminal? Bantha brain? Never mind. I give up. Luke felt Savar stiffen, felt a rush of frustration, anger, and yes, guilt from the officer. It startled Luke. Clearly this was no lackey enjoying the arrest, but someone who regretted it. He's resisting! The voice was muffled and watery. Luke knew it had to be the Corran speaking. Luke spun... they're those, never mind. I'm dumb. Where was I? Luke spun, his right arm still in the captain's grasp, in time to see the Corran bringing his shoulder weapon into line, aiming at Luke. From that moment, things moved fast. 5 lightsabers, Luke's not among them, snap-hissed into colorful, humming life, and were raised against possible attacks. One security agent, who looked to be a boy about Ben's age, twitched and fired. Probably inadvertently, the bolts sped toward Luke. He leaned away from it, not feeling threatened, but Cam caught it on his blade and it bounced almost straight down into the permacrete. Han, a blaster suddenly in hand, a small, powerful civilian model, not his usual DL-44, which is modified to fire only six shots, but each one is supremely powerful. Anyway, fired and shot and the shot sheared through the boy's rifle, throwing the ruined weapon out of his hands. Nice. The Quarren didn't fire. There was now a lightsaber tip poised directly beneath his neck. The blade belonged to none of the Jedi. The dark-haired woman held it, her hand rock steady, a curious smile on her face. The Quarren's gaze was on her now rather than on Luke. I wonder who she is. The security troops brought their weapons up, variously aiming at Han and the Jedi, but disciplined operatives, they held their fire pending their captain's order. Except the one kid. Savar, his expression ugly, turned toward the Quarren. Miz, did you just not understand the words support role, or are you stupid enough to violate my orders deliberately? The Quarren hesitated. You stiffened. The only reasonable conclusion was that he used a Jedi technique on you. The only reasonable conclusion is that you're an idiot, and I don't see you putting your weapon down. At Savar's words, a half-squad of operatives aimed at the Quarren. Though it was clear the woman with the saber needed no help. The Quarren, reluctant, lowered the device. He glanced between the woman and the troops covering him. You shouldn't point weapons at me. It doesn't improve your prospects for survival. Savar's expression became disdainful. Now you're on record for threats. Worn-out, petulant, whiny threats, come to think of it. He turned to face Luke again. The Jedi at Luke's nod deactivated and stowed their lightsabers. So did the dark-haired woman. Han tucked his blaster away into a sheath at the small of his back. Ah! The troops finally lowered their rifles, though several kept an eye on the Quarren. Nice shooting, Luke whispered to Han. Han's expression was sour. Short-barreled piece of junk. I was aiming at his nose. Sure you were. Savar led Luke to the personnel carrier that had landed directly in front. Its crew of security troopers, plus the woman in dark Jedi robes and the Skakoan, packed in as well. Leia insisted that someone accompany Luke, and Savar chose Han. Not a Jedi were his words. With Han Solo on one side and an empty seat on the other, Luke waited, listening as Savar, outside, addressed members of his detail. Besson, you're the stupidest trooper I've ever had the displeasure to command. Who told you to shoot the prisoner? No one, sir. I didn't mean... Good answer. I didn't mean to. I'm just incompetent. There we go. Are you competent to do 200 push-ups for me? The boy's tone became one of dejection. Yes, sir. Good. Sergeant Karn, come and watch him do 200 push-ups. Then acquire transport and watch him run back to the blockhouse on foot. Han whispered. To think I originally chose a military career. Huh. You had a military career. You made the rank of general, then retired. Don't rub it in. Can you do 200 push-ups? Shut up. The troopers watched, eyes wide, as the two most famous humans in the galaxy, one of them under arrest for a felony, made small talk. Savar, entering, slammed the transport side doors shut behind him, leaving them all illuminated by weak blue glow rods. He sat down beside Luke. As the transport lifted off, Han looked among the troopers. Who wants to play some sabak? Or sabak, I forget how it's pronounced. I'll use my winnings for Master Skywalker's bail. Oh man, I didn't drink enough water this morning. Okay. So yeah, that was chapter 2. A lot of things in that book you might not know about if you didn't read any of the old EU back in the day. So yeah, if you're interested, let me know down in the comments, and I will be sure to put up a series of videos to be a companion for this series, explaining all the things you might have missed I can't think of anything else in regards to that. Sorry, both chapters were so long. That's partially why I wanted to bulk record a few of the Five Nights at Freddy's videos so that it wouldn't be as much of an issue on me or you guys when I have to work. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'm a really big fan of Star Wars. I love Five Nights at Freddy's, both the games and the books and everything else in between. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got. If you have any suggestions for books to read, games to play even, I kind of want to get back to doing that somewhat every now and then. We'll see what happens. I have a ton of Star Wars games, for instance. Anyway, until next time, goodbye everybody. May the Force be with you.